Hey guys, Chop here. There are many theories on the Shades, the Heavenly Principles, Dainsleif, even Canria, all of which I have contributed to, but there's not a whole lot on the biggest figure of all of them. That's right, the most powerful character known in the Genshin universe. The Primordial One, the creator god of Teyvat, the being that made the Shades and the usurper of worlds. Who actually are they? Why did they come to Teyvat and where are they now? What's gonna happen to them? This theory will be exploring these questions and just what they mean for the future of Genshin's story. Let's get into it. I'm sure you're all well acquainted with the book Before Sun and Moon, which is where almost all of our information for the creation of Teyvat lies. We learn about this creator in two names. The first is the Primordial One and the second is Thanos. This distinction is actually of importance, but I'll get to it later in the video. If you don't know much about the book or lore, there's plenty of videos to catch you up on that. But all you really need to know for this theory initially is that a creator god known as the Primordial One came to Teyvat and went to war with the dragon sovereigns that ruled the world before them. The Primordial One won and created 4 shining shades of itself. One of these is Istaroth, the god of time, and another is the god of life. I have an entire theory on who these other shades are, including their names, but their domains are theorized to be death and space, where this space is the sustainer of heavenly principles. Another descender called the Second Who Came fought the Primordial One, and the rest is history. We don't know for certain the winner, but it's probably the Primordial One given the information we currently have. This is all the information we really know about the Primordial One, but from this it's clear what the origin is for Teyvat's creation story: Gnosticism. Gnosticism is the basis for all the main details in Genshin, like the Archons, Gnosis, and this creation story. This part isn't actually even a theory. It was openly said by a developer that these bigger ideas in Genshin are based on Gnosticism. So, naturally, I did the only normal thing to do when learning this information. I used my university resources to study every Gnostic paper I could get my hands on. The most obvious trend I saw in my research was related to the creator god of Gnosticism, the Demiurge. See, Gnostics believed in a true god that ruled in the highest layer of heaven. They also believed, however, of an inferior creator god, the Demiurge, which made our world, and that was the justification for its imperfections, because that god was also imperfect. The Demiurge then made 7 Archons to help it rule, despite the imperfections like the decaying of life and earth, natural disasters, suffering, etc. It's the true god that was said to have passed down divine sparks to humanity, and some could unlock this potential in the form of a Gnosis, which would let them surpass the Demiurge and join the true god in heaven. With this little intro into Gnosticism, it's immediately obvious what Hoyoverse took from this ancient religion as the initial inspiration for Genshin Impact. We know that the Primordial One is imperfect. I mean, just look at everyone wanting to overthrow them. So they would fit in the Demiurge position quite nicely. They made the Archons, humanity, Earth, and are also imperfect. So far, it's a pretty one-to-one comparison. There should therefore be a true higher god above the Primordial One in Genshin. One that gives divine sparks to the people for them to realize their true potential. Sounds an awful lot like Vision Wielders, doesn't it? There's another name for them in the game though: Allogenes. This is the name Venti uses for Vision Wielders, which is a very odd word to use. See, Allogenes is another Gnostic word, essentially meaning alien or foreigner. This is really odd and curious, because why are Vision Wielders classed as alien or foreign? It gets even weirder than that though, because the word in Japanese is Genshin. The name of the game is after the Japanese word for allogene. That's not even the weird part though, because it doesn't mean allogene. It's the English translation that turned it into that, because the actual original word means primordial, God. And we're back to where we started, full circle. So, now we have even more questions than we had to begin with. Why are Vision Wielders foreign in the English translation and a primordial god in the original? This is the same primordial word that is used to describe the Primordial One. The only difference is that the creator god of Teyvat is called One and not a god. That's not to say that the Vision Wielders are above the Primordial One or more powerful, but perhaps just that they have a part of the true god within them. And this explains a lot, actually. It would explain why they are an allogene in the English localization, because this godhood within them is foreign to Teyvat and the creator god. It also matches up pretty well with the Gnostic equivalent that we know Hoyoverse uses as a strong basis for a lot of these terms. because the divine spark in Gnosticism is a part of the true God imbued within the people ambitious enough to join him in heaven, escaping the fake world. Something like this seems to be occurring in Genshin too, because those with ambition strong enough are granted this awakening and power that, in Hoyoverse's own words, don't belong to Teyvat. Now, this could serve as reinforcement for a rather old theory that some had about the Ascended Vision Wielders being locked in a prison in Celestia, because the Primordial One doesn't want them to ascend to the true heaven and learn the truth, so they lock them up. I'm not going to be making a case for that in this video, it's just an interesting theory to maybe reawaken. I'm sure you're thinking about all the other terms that may allude to Gnosticism now that I've rattled a lot of these off, but there actually isn't an abundance left. There are two though that I want to focus on just briefly. I've touched on syzygy somewhat before, so I won't go too in depth with it, but the premise of it is that syzygy is a male-female pairing of aeons, opposing ideals. Light and dark, beginning and end, peace and anger, that kind of thing. The second word to focus on is one I've just mentioned, Aeon. It's not in Genshin Impact though, instead it's in the new Hoyoverse game, Honkai Star Rail. I'm not going to spoil anything for anyone, so don't worry, but just know that there are cosmological gods in that game known as Aeons that represent ideals. As far as I know, they have 18 of them, which is a strange number to have. In my research, the only number I could see representing these Aeons in Gnosticism is either 30 or 32. That would indicate that there could still be more to find, and that can be in Genshin. See, there's an event every Abyss reset called Moment of Syzygy. This means a singular moment in which two opposing Aeons meet to become a pairing. It happens when the Traveller enters the Spiral Abyss, so it seems only logical to assume that the Traveller is an Aeon. Which Aeon would they be though? Going through all of them, there's only one that really makes any sense. See, when the Demiurge, a fallen Aeon, made this sinful world, the true God is said to have sent the Aeon Jesus down to it to help the people overcome him. That's right, I'm making the case that the Primordial One, a fallen Aeon, is meeting his match in the Traveller, Jesus. It may sound ridiculous, especially with so many theorists suggesting they're Lucifer or some other fallen angel, but no, the Traveller is good. We've never seen them do any bad. They oppose the evil of Teyvat, or at least will. So I'm going the opposite route and comparing him to the Christian Gnostic Jesus. I mean, we did fall on Teyvat and go about helping everyone, trying to take down the evil powers that rule Teyvat, so it does actually line up pretty well. I know it may be a little hard to adjust to this theory because it does go against the norm, but this evidence and more can attest to it. The Traveller is widely accepted to be light, which is Jesus. He is said to be the divine light, placed on earth to take down the creator god, in Gnostic Christianity at least, just like our Genshin protagonist. I'm going to move on from this point, but I want to continue this with at least the notion of the Primordial One being an Aeon for the rest of this theory. It took a lot of information and digging, but in a rather roundabout way, we got to a decent answer for who the Primordial One is. They're based on the Gnostic figure of the Demiurge, an Aeon. That doesn't necessarily mean they're the Honkai Star Rail type of Aeon, but they're more realistically an Aeon in the actual Gnostic term. Using the Gnosticism basis too, we can answer why they came to Teyvat, simply because they don't know any better. They formed the world from the abyss to feel the love of their creations, humanity. This love was denied because of a higher being that failed to interfere completely with their creations, but left hints for them to find. This wasn't Genshin I was talking about, by the way. That was Gnosticism. It just lines up really well with this overall lore in the game. You can tell the developer really meant what they said in the interview, talking about using this as their basis. There's just one problem left with these two questions though. Who is Thanos? It was the other name given to the creator god, but only using the words may be, not that they are the Primordial One. This is a weird one, because Thanos is far from Gnostic. They're ancient Greek, which lines up really well with the culture we found before Sun and Moon in Enkanomiya, a ruined ancient nation based on the ancient Greeks. This change from Gnosticism to Greek suggests to me that there's a lack of validity to it. Not necessarily that the Primordial One didn't birth from an egg and use it to create the fake sky of Teyvat, but just that they are not recognised as Thanos to the rest of Teyvat. Enkanami just thought of them this way as Thanos, the deity of light, which given the Shining Shade lore, the Primordial One is likely the god of light. I have a whole elemental colour theory for more details on that, but assuming it's true, then the other ancient civilizations would likely refer to the Primordial One with the same theme. If we get an ancient Rome civilization that has been destroyed in the future, which I'm hoping is in the form of Atlantis and Fontaine purely because it would be cool and not because of any actual reasonings, then they may call this creator god Aurora. This isn't really a foolproof speculation method though, because we only have one example of this so far. I'm a little disappointed we didn't hear of Aya in Sumeru, who is the Sumerian goddess of light, so I wouldn't count on this being accurate. It will tell us a lot though if it does crop up in the future, so look out for it in Fontaine. There is something I find really strange though. Everybody keeps referring to this Primordial One as the sustainer of heavenly principles. Apep, Nahida, they both allude to it, but don't outright say it. It's really strange though, because I believe in the already popular theory that the artifacts belong to the Shades, with the sustainer being the shade of space and the Primordial One being related to Logos. The origin of that word isn't all too important, by the way, just that it's Gnostic and has a very poor definition that somehow relates to God, so it's theorized to be this creator god's artifact. Why then do they keep calling the Sustainer the Primordial One? Unless there's some funky transformation going on where they weaken into a new form to make the Shades, but it seems unlikely given that we have records of the Primordial One being present alongside the Shades. It's at this point that we have to look elsewhere for answers. The Traveller's Story. The in-game text states the following: "The Keeper is fading away, the Creator has not yet come, but the world shall burn no more, for you shall ascend." This Keeper that it refers to is unfortunately poorly worded in English, because it actually refers to the Sustainer in Chinese. So this tells us where the Primordial One is. The Creator. Gone. They're not around at the moment, but they will be. It says not yet, which implies that it will happen. This is backed up in the Chinese translation too, from what I could garner. This feels like some weird Ai and Raiden Shogun puppet business again. I left the Raiden Shogun in charge to sustain eternity, a bit like what it seems the Primordial One did in leaving the ruler of space to sustain the heavenly principles, taking the mantle temporarily, if you will. The question is then, where are they now? There are only really three possibilities. The first is that they're just in Celestia, perhaps recovering still from the disastrous fight against the second who came. Secondly, they could be outside of Teyvat entirely. They are alien after all, and they could have just left to do something before coming back. The final possibility I want to entertain is that they're trapped in the Abyss, the only place where nobody could get to them. Perhaps they fell there in this big fight, or maybe they're just trying to find the Genesis Pearl. Personally, I think option 1 and 3 are the most likely, but it's all speculation. It's just that these are the only places the creator can be, but the reasoning for it, we currently have no evidence for. I do think it could be an argument, by the way, that the Primordial One is the true god, whereas the Sustainer is the Demiurge. But until we learn more, I think the most sensible and logical answer is to believe the Creator God to be based on, well, the Creator God. If you want my current hypothesis though, I'm going to refer to my Gnostic hymn theory and analysis video, where I theorize the first heir to be the Primordial One. They forgot where they came from, and that's why they made Teyvat. They were looking for the Genesis Pearl, but no longer. So I'm going to hypothesize now that they're probably recovering in Celestia because of this. We're the ones that will have to find the Genesis Pearl, so I doubt they have it now or are even looking for it. Again, this is just a hypothesis, because the evidence I've given kind of runs out at this point. Unless you want to connect it to them trying to stop the true god from handing visions out, but it's just as much speculation as anything else. My final point for this video then will be the future. Given the story quote from the Traveller, I believe that the Primordial One will return once we reach the climax of the game. I think they're the opposite Aeon to the Traveller, and therefore they should represent darkness, which confused me for a while, because I've always talked about them being the divine light, like the Traveller. This was until I received a very insightful comment from Ryoma Hoshi, where he talked about the syzygies within the same ideals, like I and Makoto having opposite ideals of what eternity is, or Rukkhadevata and Nihida. I've even theorized this to be the case for Fontaine. So it could be that the Traveller and the Primordial One share the same ideal, but have different ideas of it. With the Sustainer fading, they may ask the Traveller to replace them and rule over Teyvat once we beat them, but obviously our ideals are purer than that, I hope at least. So let's have a long story short conclusion. The Sustainer is weakening, the Traveller is strengthening, the Primordial One is very similar to us, but we will decline their offer to rule Teyvat and instead topple the Divine Throne in our ascension, just like the profile text states. We've looked into who the Primordial One is through Gnosticism and Ancient Greek, as well as the other implications that come with that. Possibilities of powers even greater than them, the origins of visions. There's a lot that comes with this theory, and some fun speculations that can be had with it. I know I've not mentioned the Luma Fate here, but I think they're above it if I'm being honest. I've already looked into who controls it after all, and they are beneath the Primordial One, so I think it's okay to look into it another time. If you have any theories you want to share, or any details you want me to look into, let me know in the comments, and it may just spark a new video. I love replying to you guys, there's always so many amazing ideas and theories you have, so put them out there. Until next time though, chop out, bye.